Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ plus story for today. I'm Faye Watt, and let's queer up the USA view. Protests erupt as National Park Service redefines Stonewall as LGB and not LGBTQ. Within hours of taking his oaths of office, President Donald Trump issued an executive order requiring U.S. government offices to stop recognizing transgender identities. The order states, quote, "It is the policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality," end quote. After the issuing of these executive orders, many government websites, including the U.S. Health Department, removed mention of transgender people from their websites. This erasure of transgender identities upsets many in the LGBTQ plus community, and tensions reached a peak when on Thursday, February 13th, the National Park Service followed suit and removed the T and Q from LGBTQ on the page for the Stonewall National Monument. The monument pays tribute to the Stonewall Uprising, one of the most important events in the queer rights movement, and an event that was led in large part by transgender and gender nonconforming individuals. As recently as Wednesday, the page for the Stonewall Monument on the National Park's website read, quote, "Before the 1960s, almost everything about living openly as a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer person was illegal," end quote. Now, it states something different. Now it says, quote, "Before the 1960s, almost everything about living openly as a lesbian, gay, or bisexual person was illegal." The Stonewall Uprising on June 28, 1969 is a milestone in the quest for the LGB civil rights and provided momentum for a movement, end quote. Protests marked the weekend in New York's Greenwich Village, and Stonewall and NPS signs were vandalized. You know, this is another way that they're trying to erase our transgender and nonconforming siblings, and it makes me sick. Like, it makes me want to puke, okay? We were taught Stonewall is our Civil War. Stonewall is our 9/11. Stonewall was what kicked it off. We wouldn't have pride if it wasn't for Stonewall. And maybe you weren't there and you don't know your freaking history, but the first shot glass or the first brick, depending on who you ask, was thrown by a transgender person, okay? Okay, you know, it's Marsha P. Johnson. Okay, she was there. Sylvia Rivero, she was there. Okay, and they were transgender folks. So the fact that they just do it like that seamlessly. We're just going to erase this little marking on this. I mean, on the Stonewall Monument, to eliminate the T and the Q is just blasphemy. It's disgusting. It's a slap in the face to any person that considers themselves LGBTQ plus. Boys,
I'll tell you this. You know, it's the same. Let's look at World War II. There was so much lost there, and so much history, monuments, and writings, and books, and so much.
True.
The one thing that we hold dear is that history. We know what happened, and we uphold it that way. That's our responsibility.
Yeah.
Anybody can say and do whatever they choose to do. It is our responsibility to uphold the truth. And it is our moment to stand by our brothers and our sisters and to make sure that if you don't know a part of history, you know it.
Yeah.
Because no one can erase your own history.
No one. No one.
They can think. Anybody can think and say that you don't exist, but your truth is different. And we have to have a voice loud enough to be able to say the truth.
I know that, Raul, but a lot of us are tired.
And we're going to be tired.
You know what I mean? And we're going to have that fatigue, right? And we've got to like wake up from that fatigue or let somebody else take the wheel while we're resting or vice versa and get this word out, because I wasn't around in 1968, right? So an elder had to tell me the story, right?
Right.
And those stories have to continue to be passed down, like Raul says. They erased us from freaking everywhere. We know we still exist, and we know that history still happened, right? Larry?
Yeah, I mean, this affects me in so many different ways. I remember coming out in the mid-'80s as a very young person and going to the site that was shown there at National Park Service across from Stonewall in the Village. And I remember feeling really excited. You know, I used to go to, before the internet, live groups where people met, something that you mentioned in your piece, Raul, where, you know, people were mentored. So I had people from the Mattachine Society, both men and women, who are my mentors. And they were like historic heroes.
Right.
I mean, just regular people. One guy was a corporate lawyer. Another person was an educator. And maybe what we need to do is get our community motivated, no matter what generation you're from, but take the opportunity. I know some people are going to flip out when I say this, but at events and bars and things, take a moment to talk about it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be the highlight of the thing where it becomes a lecture, but bring some reality to the moment. And I'm glad you brought that up in your piece earlier. Some of the greatest things, I look back, I have friends now who were one of the first gay couples I ever met. They're coming down to go to South Beach in March, and I know them for over, almost 40 years. And they're like pillars, but they were an example to me of what, because I thought, I had the stereotype when I was coming out, and that's what made it hard coming out, because I said, no, I want to be settled down, and I want a house with a white picket fence. And society at that time was saying, no, people like you don't have that,
Yeah.
So it's important.
It is very important.
Ujima Men's, right? If you've never heard of them, definitely look them up. What they've been doing for the last couple of years is taking stories from older Black queer folks,
Yes.
okay, and videoing them, filming them to put together something, right? Exceptional. We've got to do that with
Absolutely.
our older LGBTQ people.
We have to hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
We have to have accountability. Someone told me when I was very young and I started hosting on the microphone, at the clubs and places. And I used to make jokes and things, and somebody came to me and told me, you have a huge responsibility. That's a privilege to be able to communicate to masses of people. And there's a big difference when somebody just talks and nobody listens, but when somebody speaks and that they listen, it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
So we have to hold each other accountable, and we have to hold ourselves accountable. Whatever was given to you, whether it was history, whether it was love, whether it was support, anything, it isn't for you to keep. It is something you must give back.
I love that.
And that's extremely what's important in our community right now.
Yeah.
Even if as a young person right now watching, you have to hold yourself accountable. If I don't know about where I come from, if I don't know what went through these people, what they went through to be able for me to be able to enjoy the life that I have today, you have to make sure that you are accountable for knowing that history and for protecting it.
No, it's true, especially like these young boys that are married, right? How do you think you were able to get married?
Absolutely.
Because people had to fight. Vaughn, what do you think?
Well, I might flip the script a little bit.
Please,
here.
you always do, baby.
I know, right? But, I'm thinking back, okay, when they started tearing down all the monuments, right? All the Confederate monuments, all of us were happy, right, that this was happening, and we're seeing the reverse of that. That's what with them erasing us. But that monument is not us. We're the monument.
Right.
We're the ones that live this.
Yeah.
So we're the ones, as you said, responsible for continuing to tell this. A monument doesn't tell the story.
Absolutely.
We do. So
that.
let them do what they want to do with a monument. We're the ones that are still going to be here.
Do you agree, Edward?
I to an extent, and I'm so grateful for, when I was growing up, I was interested in the drag culture and pageantry, as we were talking about it. And, when I saw documentaries like Paris is Burning and the one before it in the 60s, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but it introduced me to kind of like a different lifestyle from that was something that was resonating in me, but I felt that was also included into my world too. So, I went and figured out my own, path, because it wasn't being taught to me, because I grew up in a conservative Republican family. So I had to take the knowledge that I had and go and find it, and go through the resources and stuff. So it's important for us to capture these moments, whether it's on film or on the stage, in art, whatever it is, and to really push out our voices this way, because that's the only way we're going to tell our stories creatively, as well as, in history too. They can't erase us, they could take it out for a time being, a couple of letters, but the pendulum swings the other way, and we're just going to put it right back in there, because what, they're already talking stuff about extinction burst, so that's going to be something that is going to be very interesting to
for sure. So that is the big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.